Well, first off, I have to say that I'm very happy that you could join us today. It's very awesome to get to talk to you, and I'm sure our listeners are very happy to hear from you because, they've heard you in pretty much every superhero-esque thing ever. Thank you for coming to the show, Phil LaMarr.
Thank you, Jackie.
My
Nice to be
big,
on it.
my big long speech and spill that goes on and on and on. I have noticed, though, going through your credits that, I see a pattern with the superhero thing, whether it be into animation or video games. Is that just your own personal taste, or do you just keep finding yourself in those sort of animation and genres?
It's I don't know. I'm a superhero fan. I'm a comic book reader from probably the age of 10. So I certainly have a love for that stuff, but you know loving something doesn't help you get the job necessarily. It's actually just been a really fun coincidence in a lot of cases because I've also done mini animated shows and video games as well that aren't in that wheelhouse, but I find myself time and again going back into the superhero realm, and I always have a good time.
Well, that's actually really cool. So you get to kind of show your geekiness as well.
Yeah, the first show I worked on was Justice League, and that was just great for me because I grew up reading the DC comics, and so they would pull storylines from the comic books, and I would go, I know where you got that, and the writers I think appreciated having somebody who got it.
Oh yeah, I totally understand, and I would think that it would also help you become that character because most superheroes, they're fighting for something, and you kind of would know their backstory, if you're familiar with their comic book.
Yeah, definitely, it helps understand it. Although you end up having to put aside the fanboy thing in order to make it real, for yourself. Like I knew the John Stewart character from Justice League, but I had never had any real strong interest in the character. But the new, um, way they approached it, I found really interesting. So it was, I had the old stuff, but it didn't really feed into what I was doing on the show.
That's actually a really interesting take to that. Is there any time where, knowing their backstory though, or having the comics, or being a total geek helped the character?
Yes, I played Gambit on Wolverine and the X-Men, and it wasn't a main character, and they didn't have a lot of backstory on it when they first came in. But of course, I knew all the backstory. I remember when the character was introduced into the comic books, and I'd also separately, done. I knew how to do, New Orleans accents myself, so I had a real feel for the character, coming into it, which I have to assume helped a little bit.
And now, personally, when I was, going over all your credits and everything, one of my first interviews was actually with Liam O'Brien, who was Warren Darksiders. And when I found out you were, basically the evil demon of that one who collects the souls, I couldn't even fathom it was you. It just, the voice was so good.
Thank you. Yeah, I like to fool people. Although sometimes they like it better. People hire you because they like a sound you did and they want you to do the thing that they liked. But I like to do something different. I love it when people say, "I had no idea that was you."
And definitely you had to do sort of this kind of evil, slightly raspy voice. Is that difficult at all?
Um, Actually, it can be. Vulgrim was great because he doesn't fight or die. So it was much easier than it would have been, like what was it? Diablo 3, I played a monk. And you figure, hey, a monk doesn't talk much. This is going to be an easy gig. Except that that monk was a fighting character that fights through the entire game. So it was just so much, screaming and grunting and, okay, small attacks, large attacks, medium small attacks. And that kind of stuff for 4 hours straight just wears you out. Vulgrim was fun because you just have to, just play with it. It doesn't hurt.
And I hear with the fighting games and also the army games where you're yelling about grenades, those always tear up your voices a lot.
Oh, I'm lucky. I've never had to do any of, like Call of Duty or any of that stuff where it's hours of yelling. Although my this is the thing that I'm trying to sell to the video game industry. Stunt voices. Just like they have stuntmen in movies. Nobody needs to see Harrison Ford's face slam into the car as he jumps off the building. You just need to think that the character did it. So there's really no reason you've got to have the same guy who does all of the exposition in this voice, scream, ah, when he gets shot. It doesn't need to be the same guy. It can be some guy who screams professionally and does it really well.
That's actually very interesting. So that could perhaps be, some of the smaller voice actors who haven't gotten their foot in the door.
Exactly. Or somebody who's, there's like one guy who'll do the high growls and grunts, and one guy who does the low ones, and they might be somebody who, I don't know, for whatever reason, because they're just starting out, or they are just really good at sounds but can't really do the acting. They could get into the industry that way, and it would also separate time, because that way you could do more of the dialogue recording with the dialogue actor, and then you can do all of the grunts and screams and death cries you want with the stunt guy and get him, get it exactly the way you want it, as opposed to, having an actor who's done 3 hours of talking blow his voice out, and so you get these awful screams. I mean, because once your voice is gone, it's gone. It's like, okay, we need one more death scream.
Like a puppy dying.
Exactly. It's like, well, he's a bigger guy. I know, but this is all I have left.
But at the same time, I've heard so many horror stories about fighting games and losing your voice, especially at the worst moment, if you're just about to come up with a big scene. Have you had that happen?
No. I think it's also, I'm very conscious of it, and I like to go through the script ahead of time and also talk to the people who are running the session, like, okay, what are you going to need me to do? And usually what I'll do is have them put any yelling at the end of the session, so that we can make sure that, because the last thing you want to do is scream for 10 minutes and then go, oh, we forgot there's this really heartfelt scene where you pick up the child. It's like, I can't do it anymore, because sometimes it's not even about losing your voice, but about losing your range. When your voice is really worn out or tired, usually for me what happens is I lose my upper register. So, at a time when you'd want the character to be able to speak softly and express something incredibly emotional, that's the part of your voice that's gone.
Right, I understand. And I've heard many stories, actually, that throughout the years, they're finally realizing it's like the light bulb turned on. They're like, oh, maybe we shouldn't blow out their voices at the beginning of the session.
Well, and it's also because of where video games started and where they're coming from. I remember we were talking about Resident Evil before we, at one point, and I remember playing one of the first Resident Evil games years and years and years ago, and it was a really good game. The gameplay was great, but the voice acting was so awful that it took you out of it. You'd have this, zombie come crashing through the wall, and then the hero would go, "We've got to get it," and it just killed all of the excitement of the moment. And now that they've, evolved the games technically and graphically to the point where you need the voices to match what they're doing visually. Otherwise, it hurts the entire game. And so I think it's about the evolution of, the technical evolution has happened. Now the understanding evolution is coming from behind. We understand what we're doing, from the production standpoint, from the acting standpoint, all that.
Well, there's always a thought process, an ongoing debate as to whether video games are art, or if they'll ever be classified as art. And I think, the storytelling and the acting is finally trying to fit together to be like, hey, recognize this, we're art.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think part of what makes something art is time. Comic books are art now instead of just, something to line a birdcage with, because they've lasted long enough. and also because people who grew up with that form then moved into the mainstream and started becoming people who decide what counts. That's really what it's going to be about. As soon as you have, senators who played video games, or curators in museums who grew up playing video games, that's when video games will be accepted as art. It has nothing to do with the actual games themselves.
Well, no, that's actually a really good opinion, and I like that theory right there. But I will say at the same time, the more that, games evolve, I think it also helps that, they're finally getting writers on board as soon as the game starts, instead of halfway into development when they've got half the dialogue over here and half the other game over here. And it's like, okay, make a story now.
Right. That's true. I mean, that's true. They're absolutely getting better. But, I mean, I'm sure there were games, and there are probably more games now that are artful than there used to be. But ultimately, most things start out trying to make something to sell. And if it becomes art, it's a byproduct,
I have to agree with that. I mean, you look at games, you look at a gamer's perspective, it's like they just want to play something because it's fun and it's entertaining for them. That's a selling point. They don't really buy something because it's going to be the most story-driven game of the year.
Right. Or because the critics said, it's like, I want to own. Actually, that would be really funny if video games eventually got to got to a level of fine art. Like people now buy paintings because this painting is art, not because they have any individual, enjoyment of it. But can you imagine if they got to, it's like, oh my gosh, I just got Need for Death 2. It's like, I just had to have it. Did you play it? No, I just put it on my wall.
I'm a terrible person to say that too, because I'm a collector. I buy things. Like, I have a PAL game right now, a European game for PlayStation 2 that I can't play because I don't have a European PlayStation 2, but I have it because it's a horror game. And
there you go. You're a collector. You're a collector, like an art collector, And I have friends who are comic book collectors. I'm not. I buy books to read, and they always ask, "Do you want to put that in plastic?" I'm like, "No, then I can't read it."
I understand that mentality because I also collect, the anime and video game action figures, and I can't keep them in the box. It's like the point is to show them off. They have to be everywhere in my room.
Right, it's one of those things, because if you keep it in the box, I mean, the reason you keep it in the box is to keep it in mint condition so that its value stays or increases or whatever. But that's one kind of value. What's the other kind of value is like, how does it feel? How much fun is it? Can you play with it? And it's a question of which way you value the art.
Definitely, and we totally got off the subject, but I think this is a better conversation in all actuality. It shows your geekiness to the fans. I'm just saying.
Oh, absolutely.
But we're going to take a short break to try and get back on track here, so keep it tuned.
Hey there, everyone! This is your pal Yugi Boy, and if you like the review Kana did on Dante's Inferno, then you should check out the company that sponsored that, Game Tag Stores. Not only can you rent any used game, but you can also buy their new games. They've got plenty of great titles. They're also better than all competitors, so make sure to check them out. Even the kids agree, right, kids?
Game Tag Stores is the best!
I'm back, and I still have my guest of honor with me, and we should be a little more focused now. Just a little.
I'm probably going to get, spiked if I don't ask about this, because I had plenty of people, when they found out you were going to be on, they wanted to know. And anime fans love Samurai Jack.
Me too.
Do you want to say why?
That is art. That show from the very beginning, it is successful on so many levels, visually, sonically, story-wise. I mean, it's a great hero. It's a fantastic archetypal story. It can affect you on a number of levels, just, jaw-gaping, like, action, but also, like, sweetness and tenderness. I can show it to anybody and know that there will be something in it for them to enjoy. Men, women, old people, young people, whatever.
I can agree with that because I remember, there were times where Jack was very, sweet to little kids and upheld honor and things like that. And, that to me, that's cute. I like cute things. I'm a female. Go figure. And other people probably watched it for the action and the sword fighting and everything else like that. So I can see exactly what you're saying there, and it doesn't surprise me that anime fans love Samurai Jack because it has sort of the epic storytelling of, not necessarily mature anime, but the really idolized anime in general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It was such a pleasure to work on. I wish there was more.
Well, I heard at one point through the grapevine that there was a feature film in production. I don't know what happened to that. Do you have any inkling on that one?
As far as I know, it's not in production. It's in the planning development stages, which may mean it will go into production or may mean it never will. There's just, I don't know, I guess if they can get all of the stars to align and one of the stars has a pocket full of money, then it will happen.
We want to find that star too. And just saying, 91.8 The Fan is looking for that one as well. But if you do get the chance, would you reprise your role?
Oh, absolutely. I'll do all the parts. I'll do Aku as well, because we actually lost the actor Mako who did the voice of Aku, which will be really, really tough shoes to fill.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I remember watching that as a kid, and I remember that voice being scary as a kid.
Seriously, his laughs would last longer than the air could possibly still be in his lungs. And it's like, really? Are you still going?
That's amazing, but at the same time, I do hope the best for the project if it goes through, and hopefully you get to reprise your role, and hopefully I satisfied all the fans out there for asking about it. You can stop emailing me. I loved it too, but, he has other projects, just saying. But I do have a question. Do you have any upcoming projects or current projects that you want to plug and tell people about?
It's so tough in animation because people ask, well, what are you working on? It's like, well, do you mean what am I working on that's airing now, or what am I recording this week that will air in a year? Right now, there are new episodes of the show Futurama that came back from the dead thanks to Comedy Central. I think we're about 3 episodes in to the new episodes that are running on Comedy Central. So that's really exciting. I've been part of 2 shows, actually, that have been canceled and come back. Family Guy and now Futurama.
I was going to say, it had a Family Guy moment.
Right. And, it's always great to be able to work on a really good show like either of those. Futurama, obviously I have even more invested in because Hermes is a bigger part of that show than Ollie Williams is of Family Guy. But, yeah, that's the one thing I'm working on that really excited about because those episodes are really funny. What else? I'm working on a Marvel show, Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which I'm not sure when that's supposed to come out. They're actually going to have a panel down at Comic-Con later this month. So that'll probably have all the information about when it's airing. So anybody who's going to be in San Diego, come to the Futurama panel and the Avengers panel.
Now, I believe you are Wonder Man in Avengers, yes?
And the voice of Jarvis.
Oh, okay.
The AI Jarvis.
Could you tell us a little bit about either of your characters, for those who don't know?
Well, the really interesting thing, from a comic book fan perspective, this Jarvis is modeled on the Iron Man movie Jarvis. He's not a balding English guy. He's a artificial intelligence English voice that Tony Stark speaks to, and that runs the armor and runs everything Stark and Avengers Mansion and all of that. And I'm not going to say much about Wonder Man because we don't want any spoilers, except that his storyline is similar to the comic book storyline of Wonder Man.
All right, we can understand that, and I don't want to get you in trouble. That's we ask you here to promote your stuff, not get you fired.
Exactly.
And was there anything else on your mind that you can think of that you'd like to promote?
What else are we working on? Well, I'm going to be in New York in the fall, playing Cowboy Curtis in the Pee Wee Herman show. It's a live stage production that combines Pee Wee's Playhouse, the Saturday morning TV show, with the original midnight Pee Wee Herman show, and into like a really fun stage production. We're doing it at the Stephen Sondheim Theater on Broadway starting in October.
That must be fun to, not only do the voice work, but then to go back to your roots in stage.
Yeah, it's a blast. I mean, I get to do some on-camera stuff, a little more this year than previous. I also still perform with the Groundlings, which is a group that I took classes with and came up with years ago, along with a lot of people, Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry. We're all in there together, and I still do improv shows there. I'm doing an improv show at the Groundlings on Monday, July 19th, for anybody who's in LA. Doing a show called The Black Version, where we're going to take a suggestion of a classic, AFI 100 American film and do like the black version of it.
Oh gosh, I can picture it now. Well, we do have some people I know for a fact who are in Los Angeles area, so hopefully they will come check that out. And I do have to wonder, our listeners, they're naturally stalkers because they can be creepy. But if you want them to stalk you, do you have a Twitter, Facebook, website? Do you do any of that stuff?
Yes. I have a Facebook fan page, which, I don't know what it comes up under as Facebook Phil LaMarr. Yeah. Or if you search Phil LaMarr, you'll see. Right now, there's a picture of me and Pam Grier on the page. And also, I'm on Twitter, twitter.com/Phil LaMarr. PhilLaMarr. 2 L's in the middle, 2 R's at the end.
And there's always been a huge debate between everyone we have come on. Are you a Twitter fan or a Facebook fan?
I don't know. Lately, I'm more on Twitter, because I think Twitter has better boundaries. It's also easier to just do little funny things. I'm constantly on there. I've actually linked the fan page and the Twitter, so if I come up with something good, I don't have to write it twice. But the weird thing about Facebook is the idea of friend. It's like, well, if there's somebody I don't know and we connect on Facebook, we're not friends. We are just people who connected through somebody else. That doesn't make us friends. And I think Facebook is a little funky because of that. Like, hey, I'm friends with 69 of your other friends. Like, no, you clicked a button with 69 of my other friends. That doesn't mean you and I have anything in common.
Yeah, Facebook has a tendency to suggest who I should be friends with based on who I am friends with. And I actually remember a story where my producer, Zach, was like, yeah, Facebook keeps telling me to message you on Facebook, but I'm talking to you right now. It's like, wait, I think we can communicate. We're okay, Facebook. We're okay with the communication. I mean, we got it.
I mean, the thing I love about it is being able to connect with my actual friends who are in all different places, and, be able to see a little status update and find out that, it's so-and-so's birthday, or, they got the apartment, something like that, without them having to call everybody. Although it does, I think, take away some of the actual connecting that people would otherwise be doing.
That's very true, and I am curious for those of you who want to really hardcore stalk you, like in the bushes and everything. Are there any conventions you have coming up that you want to tell anybody you'll be attending?
Yes, I'll be down at Comic-Con, and in San Diego, and where else? And I'll be at Dragon Con in September, Labor Day weekend.
I think that's Atlanta, Georgia?
Yes, it's Atlanta. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can't remember. I can barely keep track of my own conventions.
I know. It's a lot of moving around and traveling. I don't know how people do it. And especially, like, I'm just getting into the world and, like, realize it's a world. It's a lifestyle, you know? It's like people go to all the conventions. I'm like, really? How do you not have a job? How do you manage, you know? But I guess it's like setting up for the season. It's like, this is the season, you know?
Pretty much, and a lot of people, a lot of the dealers, they make their living off of that. They can make a lot more bucks, shoving all of their items into a car, driving for a little bit, and setting up somewhere than, say, just having it online because it gets their name out there.
Right. And, I mean, it's amazing. I can't imagine I went to Comic-Con before the internet exploded. I think the first time I went was after the movie Free Enterprise, which was a lot of Star Trek geeks. But I can't even imagine, like the smaller conventions existing at the level they do now without the internet. Like, before, I'm sure all those same people were just walking around separately in their own little towns and stuff going, gee, I wonder if anybody else likes this stuff. I guess not.
There's actually a somewhat small one here in Vegas, Anime Vegas. It's been going on for almost 7 years now, and I think it's roughly 6,000 people now. And, I remember when it started because I've been going 6 of those 7 years. And, yay, geek.
Right.
So I remember, watching it grow throughout the years, and it's really interesting just to see, what a convention does to people and the fans.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating to me because, I mean, like we were talking about how the internet is able to connect, people with the same interests from, miles and miles and miles away. But then I think about, the Star Trek geeks that I know from Free Enterprise, they were doing all that stuff before. Like sci-fi, anime, like people were getting together before the internet, like finding themselves, sending each other VHS tapes of stuff, And with Futurama, it's been really interesting because it's sci-fi and animation, both things that have really dedicated fans. And it's really wild to see them come together the way they do. Plus, you also have kind of a mainstream thing because Matt Groening is involved, and Simpsons, everybody loves The Simpsons, but I think the depth of love for Futurama is greater, while the breadth is not as great. Like, everybody loves The Simpsons, but they only love it this much. A small number of people love Futurama, but they love it deep. You know what I mean?
I can understand that, and that also must be very cool to, meet those fans specifically.
Yeah, it's hilarious. I mean, there was a woman who's a receptionist at a recording studio I worked. It's like, oh yeah, you should find out I work on Futurama. You work on Futurama? Oh my god! I mean, and this is not a typical geek, And it's just like, I have a tattoo of Bender on my butt. Like, really? Now, for the Simpsons comic book guy to have a tattoo of Bender on his butt, that's what you'd expect. That's a tattoo no one wants to see. You've got one that pretty much everybody would want to see, and not because it's Bender.
I'm sorry, that's really funny.
It's so funny because that's the great thing about nowadays, because geekery has become more mainstream. You see that more. It's not just fat guys in undersized T-shirts, sitting in comic book stores. It's broader than that, and it always has been. It's not just the geeks are not just a type.
It's just now they can't focus on, they can still try and focus on the overweight kids play video games, but, that's not really the majority so much anymore.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Video games especially.
Though I will say, this is a tradition that's coming up, and we're getting near to the end of our time, so I'd like to ask if you'd be willing to participate in a 91.8 The Fan tradition.
Okay.
We usually...
I guess. Is it getting a tattoo of 91.8 The Fan on my butt? Because I'd rather not do that.
No, but if you ever want to get a fake tattoo, we'll encourage that one.
Okay.
However, we ask everybody who comes on if they'd be willing to do a radio bump for us.
Of course.
Oh, awesome. And we do the bloopers all live on air. But we are wondering if you could say, my name is, I do this, and you're tuned into 91.8 The Fan.
Tuned into 91.8 The Fan. You see, I have to make sure I get the numbers right. That's the thing you
That's
mess up
the one
most.
trips on, yeah. 98.1, 91 point, the boy.
Don't stop! No. Wait. What should I say? I do. What do I do? I guess I do voices.
You can do it in.
There you go.
Yeah, you do voices or acting or stage acting or whichever you want to promote.
Okay. All right. Here we go. My name is Phil LaMarr. I do voices and faces, and you're tuned into 91.8 The Fan.
See, there you go. You didn't mess it up.
See, no, and I put on the radio voice too. Did you like that?
I like that. It was very smooth. Better than mine. Somebody's going to steal my job.
You're listening to 91.8 The Fan.
You know, that actually sounds like one of our late night DJs.
Oh, that's great.
Now he's got competition. But I must say, it was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the people listening, or no?
No, just thanks for listening. And yeah, if anybody's going to be in San Diego, follow me on Twitter. I'll let you know where I am, Phil LaMarr at Twitter. And yeah, just and for the people who send in questions, thanks also. It's always nice to know that someone's listening.
Well, thank you. And for those of you that missed any of this interview, you can catch it in the website in the next few days. So stay tuned to 91.8 The